Hey, I'm Kristine Weber. I love working with yoga teachers and helping women and mature yoga teachers allow their wisdom to shine. Thank you for joining me for my weekly live stream. Please leave a comment. It's really nice to have you here, and I would love to hear from you. So let me know what other topics you want me to talk about or what you think about this topic. Today, we're going to be talking about chronic illnesses, which is something I've been studying and teaching about for many, many years. Something I'm passionate about and very interested in. And so, one of the things that is one of the problems with chronic illnesses is that um, in the medical world, it's very hard to figure out what causes them. So, chronic illnesses are things like diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, autoimmune issues, metabolic syndrome, and many more. There's like 100 different autoimmune issues, for example. What we do know is that 90% of the $4.1 trillion that is spent in the United States on healthcare goes to chronic diseases. And sometimes what you'll hear medical people say, and what I have said myself, because that's how I learned it from like the Centers for Disease Control, et cetera, is that these are preventable, chronic preventable diseases. Often that goes together. And that word preventable to somebody who's got diabetes or somebody who has metabolic syndrome or somebody who has rheumatoid arthritis can sound really shaming, can it? And blaming like that was a preventable disease that you got there, and you didn't do the work and you got sick. And that's really common in our culture, particularly in American culture. We blame the individual for having their illness. Like you ate too much cake and you smoked all those Marlboro cigarettes, and therefore, you have this problem. And okay, there is some reality in that. Absolutely, there's reality in it. Like if somebody was smoking 2 packs a day and eating, um, you know, tasty cakes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like, yeah, diabetes and heart disease, like, okay, you can see like there's a correlation. We can say there's a correlation, right? But did you know, here's a couple of interesting things that have happened over the past 20 years or so with research. So for example, there was a big study that came out about 20 years ago called maybe 15 years ago called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. Many people have heard of it. If you haven't, look it up, Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. It's fascinating. One of the things that study showed was that there was a stronger correlation between smoking, between adverse childhood experiences like abuse in your childhood and lung cancer than there is between smoking cigarettes and lung cancer. So let me say that again. There is a stronger correlation between the shitty things that happened to you as a child and your lung cancer than there are between smoking cigarettes and getting lung cancer. Like that takes a while. That takes a shift of our brain to go, wait a minute, that's true. That's research, because what we've been, assaulted with and pummeled into us for 50 years is if you smoke cigarettes, you're going to get cancer and it's your own fault. Well, why do people smoke cigarettes anyway? Like, let's ask that question. A lot of it comes from anxiety, and nicotine is a strong anti-anxiolytic, anti-anxiety medicine. Like, do we talk about that? Can we talk about that? Like, maybe we can fix the anxiety. So there's things like that are starting to emerge in the research literature. Also, the Framingham Heart Study demonstrated like who you hang out with is going to determine whether or not you get heart disease. That's fascinating. And it points back to yogic wisdom that says that we are all intimately connected and we influence each other all the time. So, to just go, oh, you are the bad person who did this, you have this issue with your alcohol and your cigarettes and your anxiety and your depression, and you had some trauma, but that's your problem. So fix it. We have that kind of attitude in our culture. And it's very shamey and very blamey. And I myself have Hashimoto's. I have two autoimmune issues. And I've been told I have a type A personality. I'm too, much of a perfection, like on and on and on. And some of those things I resonate with, and some of those things are accurate, and I can do better. Like we can all do better, we can all be better people. We can all work on our issues. Like I feel like that's what life is about, is working on your issues. And I've spent a lot of years working on my issues, and a lot of therapy and a lot of yoga. And and I still have an autoimmune issue. Is it my fault? Well, like my personality is contributing to it, but the other big but there are other factors, right? Including shit in the environment. I'm sorry, I've got a mouth like a truck driver sometimes, but like stuff in the environment, for example, radioactive iodine. I read an article about how radioactive iodine released from nuclear power plants has possibly contributed to the epidemic of Hashimoto's disease. And it's like, is that my fault? Like, is that because of my type A personality? And by the way, type A personality is something that has been refuted for many years. So we have to stop blaming people for having type A personality, whatever the hell that means. It doesn't mean anything, right? So, so that there's stuff going on either in the environment or in the social spheres that contributes to whether or not somebody has chronic illness. Now, as our tendency as human beings, and the yoga tradition teaches this, is to deflect and blame everything else, right? So that's not useful either. It's not useful to be like, oh, I don't have to do anything because there's radioactive iodine and I can't do anything about my chronic illness, or folks like, oh, I just have diabetes, so I'm just going to eat more cake because I can take insulin. That's not a great attitude either. We have to find some middle ground between the us showing up and taking responsibility and doing what we need to do, and then also letting go of the shame and the blame around folks who are struggling with chronic illnesses, because that doesn't make anybody feel better. What makes me feel better is when a physician says to me, you're doing a great job, and like, this is something I'm going to help you work on this, and we're going to work together on it, and I want you to know, I think you're doing, you're great, and you're doing great stuff, and maybe we could tweak some of this stuff. Like, that is so much more of an effective way of reaching people. And that's how I like to reach people as a yoga therapist too. Like, hey, you're doing great, and let me see if I can help you. So much more effective than oh, look, what did you do to get this chronic illness? Like, how is that helpful? So I think we have to take out this idea of like, oh, you have a chronic preventable disease, and it was preventable, and it's your fault, and start taking more responsibility for each other as a society, and changing the culture. Like, let's clean up our air and water. Let's clean up the environment. Let's clean up our social systems that don't give people enough rest time, enough time to rejuvenate, and they're running around trying to make a living, right? That's one of the reasons. And then we call that a type A personality. Like, that, it's so unfair. It's so unfair, and it's not helpful either. And it's bad science, because we now have lots of information that says that chronic illnesses are not just about your choices, but they have a lot to do with the culture that we're living in. I've been writing about this. I'm going to release a blog on Friday if you want to know more, and that'll have some resources in it, like research papers and stuff that I hope will be helpful for you. The other thing I think that's fascinating to know is, with autoimmune diseases, is twice as many women get autoimmune diseases than men, right? What's that about? Yoga is great. I love yoga. I love yoga practice. I think we all need more of it. And we also need a kinder world that helps people to recover and maintain and live with these chronic health conditions, and and thrive despite them. That's the world I want to live in. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was really nice to have you here. Please leave a comment. Lots of love, and I'll see you next week. Mwah.